Hey, what's going on? So recently I did a post on my Instagram where I asked you guys to ask me any question you want. So in today's video we're going to do a Q&A and answer those questions. Now if you missed out on this post and you're not following me on Instagram, my Instagram account is @ignitionoffroad. Feel free to go check that out and keep up to date with more of my content. Now let's jump straight into your questions. Okay, so the first question I have here is, how did you align the rear wheel camber? Okay, so in the Subi Oz lift kit I got, particularly the 4-inch lift kit, I actually got some nylethane camber bolts that come with the kit. Essentially they're an aftermarket camber bolt. You slot them into the top hole of the rear strut and that lets you adjust that camber. Obviously from the factory, Subaru does not have a camber bolt in the rear, so when you lift your Subaru, essentially what you're doing is you're adding positive camber to those wheels. So the cheapest way to correct that is obviously the camber bolts. That's the method I've used personally. You can, however, also use adjustable lateral links. They are a more expensive option. However, you do get a lot more adjustment. You can actually space out your track width a little bit in the rear. You can adjust your toe and your camber. So they do offer more adjustment and they're probably a better choice if you do want to spend the money. It's probably something I'm going to look at doing in the future. Okay, so the next question I have is, what's your dream car? Okay, so even though I absolutely love the off-roading side of things, I am a massive car enthusiast and I do love my street cars as well. Now, a few years ago, I actually went to Germany and I did a hot lap of the Nürburgring in a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, and it was absolutely insane and it's got me hooked on Porsches ever since. So I think my dream car would probably be a classic Porsche 911 or Porsche Carrera with a RWB body kit. I think that would be absolutely sweet. What's the mod that's taken the most time to do on your Foz? I could say easily the 4-inch lift kit has taken the most time to do on the Forester. For both the install and filming, it probably took me about 3 days to complete. There is a lot of work, particularly as you're dropping all of your subframes to drop those spacers in. You're actually draining the radiator so you can extend the hoses. There's just a lot of work that went into that 4-inch lift kit. And it's not just the parts that came in the kit that take so long to install. The exhaust has to be modified to fit. The sump guard or skid plate no longer fits, so that also has to be modified. And then you also have to get your alignment and that sort of thing as well. So I think overall the 4-inch lift definitely took the most time to do on the Forester. Any ideas on swapping engine to a 2.5 turbo or EZ30? Or is the current engine enough? Alright, that's a very interesting question. I have definitely thought about this quite a lot. So when I'm off-roading, I don't really have any issues with the engine power whatsoever. Especially with that new gearbox, I've now got pretty good low range drivability, so that gives me really nice torque when I'm trying to go up hills and that sort of thing. When I take the car on the road, it's a very different story, particularly when I'm on the highway. A lot of the times on the highway, the car struggles to get up hills. I spend a lot of the highway driving between 4th and 5th gear just to try and get up the hills because particularly in that top end, it lacks a lot of power. Now I have thought about both going the turbo route and the EZ30 route. The EZ30 route would be awesome because it's a natural aspirated engine, which means it'll be more reliable. The problem, however, is the Foresters have a very narrow engine bay, not as long as the Outback and Legacy, which means when you put the H6 engine in the Forester, from what I've read, you run into issues with space and fitment, particularly with the radiator and radiator fans. So a lot of people I've read, they actually move the radiator or radiator fans to a different location, and I think for the type of build I'm going for, that doesn't really suit my application. So I do definitely want to get a bit more power, particularly up the top end. I think what I'm going to do is actually go down the route of getting a Raptor supercharger and put that on my current engine. I'll probably run it at about 6 psi. That seems to be a fairly safe number to run on the 2.5 natural aspirated that I currently have. Now the cool thing about the supercharger, obviously it's a little bit different for the Subaru, but it's also a very linear boost range, which means that I'll get it very low down and all the way up the top as well, which will be really cool in the off-road application. What sort of storage do you have in the boot? Alright, the boot of the car is fairly standard at the moment. What I have done is I've removed the spare wheel out of the spare wheel well, as my larger tyres don't fit. What I have done in there is I have installed a dual battery system in there. Other than that, I do have a cargo barrier in the back. But other than that, yeah, there's not too much going on. I do plan to put a full custom drawer setup in there in the near future to get some proper storage going. But at the moment, yeah, I don't really have much going on. Why did you choose your current job? Okay, so for those who don't know, I'm a wildland firefighter. Here in Australia, we call them forest firefighters. Now, I work throughout the summer seasons and I generally turn to YouTube over winter, hence why you won't see much content from me in summer, particularly the one we've just had, as it was a very busy summer, probably the worst fire season in Australia's history. Now the reason I've gone into that job is because originally I was actually interested in becoming a park ranger. I just love the ideas of working outdoors and that sort of forest management aspect. So after talking to a few people in the industry, they recommended I should try out for a summer fire season. So I did that and I've been absolutely hooked since. It's an awesome job. You get to travel all over the place. You get to use some really cool equipment and machinery, and just the satisfaction you get from the job, knowing that you're challenging yourself and helping other people. How long does it take you to get ready in the morning? Okay, so I do consider myself to be a morning person. Most mornings I wake up between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning, even on weekends, just because it is sort of a habit. So yeah, definitely a morning person and doesn't take me long to get up at all. Love the videos. Thoughts on winches? Would you ever put a winch on your Forester? Yes, absolutely. I want to put a winch on my Forester. I have actually started doing a winch install on the Forester. I managed to get a 12,000 pound winch, which is definitely overkill. I think 9,000 pound is probably your ideal range, but I got this one really cheap, so that's what I've gone with. I am in the process of modifying my Super Extreme bar to put that winch in. It is a very tight fit, and the Super Extreme bar, brand new, they also cost over $2,000, so it does hurt a little bit for me to cut into it. So I've actually got the winch mount finished. It's just a matter of cutting all the holes into the bar to run the winch cable. So I'm not too far off. Hopefully another project I'll get done this year. If you could pick any factory color Forester, what would it be? In terms of Forester colors, I think I actually really like that red that the early SGs come out in. I think that's a really cool color, and I've definitely considered getting that color before. I think overall favorite Subaru colors, I really like some of the new colors the cross tracks come with, particularly that bright orange is just really catches my attention, and I definitely enjoy that color. For the Forester itself, I do have a color change in mind. I think I'm going to go down the route of potentially wrapping it in a urban camo and keeping the black accents on all the bull bar and metalwork. I think that'll be a really sweet combination. If you were to have your Forester completely stock, what is the first mod you would do? First mod, I think probably tyres. I think tyres make a huge difference. If you do want to start going into an off-road application, it wouldn't take much to chuck some all-terrains on there just to give yourself that bit more grip off-road, give yourself a bit more puncture resistance, and if even on an on-road application, if you're going from very basic cheap tyres to a high quality grippy set of tyres, I think it'll really transform the way that car drives. So I think tyres is probably #1 mod I recommend. Would you say the engine has enough power and torque for most off-road driving? I did touch on this before, I do want to add a supercharger to the car, but in terms of off-road driving, I don't really have any issues with the power, particularly with that new low-range gearbox I've got on the car currently. Have you had any engine issues with water waiting? I've had absolutely no engine issues whatsoever. I have prepared the car very well for water crossings. I do have diff breathers front and rear, so for the transmission and for the rear differential. I do have the snorkel, so I'm getting nice clean air into the engine when I'm crossing rivers. I've had the car with water over the bonnets, no issues whatsoever. Sometimes when I do go into very deep water crossings, I do get a can of WD-40 and just spray around some of those electronics, and that seems to do the job very nicely. But yeah, never had any issues with wading water. How much did your dual range driveline cost? Alright, this is an interesting one. Oh, hang on. Legs are going a little bit numb here. Okay, the cost of the dual range, a lot of people have been asking, they want to know, obviously. It was a sponsor build by All Drive Subaru, so the cost for me will not be the same as what they will be for the average person. In saying that, I did manage to pick up a second-hand gearbox that had the SF low range and the 20 kilo center diff, which is a huge upgrade already. I managed to pick up that whole lot for $900. What I then added to it was a Cusco 1.5Y LSD. I believe they retail around $1,800. Also added the torque locker to the rear, and I also did a final drive swap, so I went from a 4.11 to a 4.44 final drive swap. I think all up the driver line probably cost me about $6,000 to $7,000, and I did source a lot of those parts myself. Favorite and least favorite modification. Alright, I think I can sum that up into one modification, and that would be the 4-inch lift. I love how it's transformed the car. It looks really nice now. I've got no rubbing, which is absolutely awesome. The downsides, however, is that with the current regulations in Australia, that 4-inch lift needs to be engineered to be legal on road. Not only that, I have had to also modify the exhaust, I have to modify the skid plate. So it's both my favorite and least favorite mod because it looks really good, but it does require a lot of work. If it's not too rude to ask, what's been the total cost of your build? I think honestly, I've probably spent about $15,000 all up on the car. So I managed to get the car second-hand at about $2,000. Had just under 200,000 Ks on the clock at the time. Obviously then I've added the lift kit, I've done wheels and tyres, I've bull bars and all that sort of stuff, got the transmission built. Yeah, I think all up from where I started to where I am now, I've probably dumped about 15,000 into the car, which includes the value of the car itself. Did you notice any of your mods significantly increase petrol consumption? Yes, definitely. I would say wheel and tyres and anything on the roof had the biggest impact. So my car currently does about 13 to 14 litres per 100 kilometres, which is quite a ways up from the original 6 to 7 it probably did brand new out of the factory. Now I'd say bigger, heavier tyres obviously puts a lot of stress on the car, so they add a fair bit. And also having the rooftop tent on the roof acts like a big sail and causes a lot of wind resistance. So my recommendations are, if you are building your Subaru to off-road, but you do have fuel consumption in mind, then firstly look at your tyres. Make sure you get something that's a very nice lightweight setup. The lighter your tyre and wheel combination is, the less it's going to impact your fuel economy. Secondly, look at what you've got on the roof. If you've got a big rooftop tent on the roof, it's going to act like a big sail and it's going to add a lot of wind resistance to the car. So my recommendations is, if you're going camping, have it on the roof, but if you're daily driving, try to take it off and try to keep that roof a little bit more streamlined, and that'll definitely save a little bit of fuel consumption. What happened to the channel? Okay, so a few weeks back, my channel completely disappeared off YouTube for a day. I basically woke up, I had an email saying that my channel had violated YouTube terms and regulations, and I thought it was just a hoax. So I tried to jump on my channel, and sure enough, everything was gone. When I jumped on YouTube, I was greeted with a message that said I had violated YouTube's terms and conditions, and my channel was permanently deleted off YouTube. This really sucked, and it really got me down that morning, but essentially what I did is I appealed their claim. Someone from YouTube then went and reviewed my channel and content and then found no violations, and by the end of that day my channel was back up and running, which was a huge relief. I never found out why they thought my channel was violating terms and regulations. I'm assuming it was just a glitch in the algorithm, but everything is back to normal, so I'm very happy about that. Alright, so that concludes this Q&A. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any more questions or you have anything you want to request to see on my channel, please leave it in the comments below. Feel free to also check out my FanBeach account. FanBeach is like an online tipping jar. So if you feel like you've enjoyed this video and you want to help out this channel, feel free to leave a donation of as much or little as you want, and it all helps me out on this channel. Alright, that's it for this one, and I'll see you all next time. See ya.